Hi, you've reached the voicemail of Hannah Brett with Connect Call. Just leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
1 for more options.
Hi, Hannah. I got your number from our family therapist. The reason why I'm calling is it's about my daughter. She's about 17, and how do I put it? She won't come home at curfew, then she will come home, and she looks a little inebriated. We have tried taking her to therapy. We have tried outpatient after school. It's just she doesn't really want to go. So that's been difficult. She also doesn't really want to go to school, so that's even more difficult. I really don't know how to make her. We should be looking at maybe residential treatment. Again, I don't even know how to get her there. If you could give me a call back and give me some suggestions, that would be great. All right, I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.
This is Hannah Brett with Connect Call, where I often say I do not have a clinical background, but I have a PhD for picking up the phones for families in crisis. I know that's kind of a cheesy line, but I'm just going with it right now. But basically, we did this podcast wanting to connect families, tell the stories, really, the stories that I've heard over the years of real families in crisis and how I've been able to kind of connect the dots for them, finding the resources, the answers, the right providers, so they're not navigating these complex systems alone, right? So today, my story is, and it is one that I think a lot of people can relate to. It's about really a kid taking a family emotionally hostage. I learned really early on in my career that there is this new type of parenting that's still out there. I think the generations before us, my generation, a lot of us were parented, with some structure and strict rules. And for some, it was too much. And it was a little too much of, basically structure and all that. And they wanted to, I guess what I've been reading is these parents today wanted to raise their kids in a different household where the kids had the voice and their opinions mattered. And it kind of went into like overdrive where now it feels like when I speak to parents are very, very, very conscious of not upsetting their children and not, making sure their kids want to do everything and they don't punish them and that they, they want to, go to things and they just basically don't want to go up against their kid and say, I'm mom and this is how it goes, right? Like my mom used to say, I love that you're my best friend and I'm your best friend, but I'm your mom first. And that's just how it goes, right? And I remember a long time ago when I went to treatment, as I tell a lot of people, nobody ever really wants to go to treatment. No adolescent, young adult, or adult is walking through that door. But if it wasn't for my mom who said, I'm going to say it, don't give a shit what you want. But you're getting in the car and you're going, we're cutting up the credit cards. I'm sorry you're upset, but I'm your mom. And that's just how it goes. If she hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here today, And my guests today are Tootie Landry and Brandon Mitchell, who I often call the blind side from the movie. Their story is pretty amazing. Tootie Landry, who's from Lafayette, Louisiana, back in the day, I guess you were teaching like DUI classes, right? And Brandon Mitchell was sitting in one of your classes. And at the end of the class, he stayed back and you knew him just basically, you followed football and you knew he was a football player. And you basically, kind of gave him the riot act of like, what are you doing with your life? Why are you here for the second time? If you're ready to get your life in order and you want to live this life and live a life worth protecting, give me a call. And so basically, I think that night he gave you a call and the rest was history. And so why I call you guys the blind side is when I have called Tootie and Brandon in the past, it's this beautiful combination of, these two people come in, and especially I loved using you guys with young adult guys and adolescent boys because no one's going to run or go up against Brandon, although you are a teddy bear at heart, and with girls too. But it just, I think together, you guys are the dream team, really. So the story I'm going to tell today is this really happened with us. We had a young woman out of Atlanta who, I preface with the parents, as soon as they got on the phone, their voices were wobbling. They were scared, very scared of their daughter. And she was using substances. Her mental health was out of control. And they had tried doing IOP. They had tried doing therapy. They had tried doing everything. And everything wasn't working because she didn't want to go. Right? She didn't want to do it, or, they tried giving her consequences, but they weren't really punishing her. And she was kind of controlling the show at home. And they were at their wits' end because they knew their daughter was not thriving. Right. And they knew that she needed treatment, but their main concern was, well, she needs to want to go and she needs to pick the program and we need to get her on the phone. And I always tell families, listen, I'm not about, snatching and grabbing your kids and kidnapping them and bullying them into this, getting into treatment. But for a decision like this, for going into treatment, for picking a program, of course we want a client's buy-in. Of course we want the kid to kind of not hate the whole. But typically what happens is just kind of like picking a school. A kid doesn't have really much say on what school they're going to. It's the same thing when we're talking about treatment. Sometimes, especially these kids, they don't know what's best for them. So we need to kind of get the buy-in and get the parents to not only sign up for and pick the right program for their kid, but also be ready to deliver the message that whoever has the pesos has the say-sos. Basically that this is what's going to happen, or, you can't live under our same roof. These are the consequences. If you don't go, you can't chill at the house. You can't have the car, you can't have your phone. And parents are so terrified to tell their kids this. They think they're going to combust. They think they're going to while out. And in this situation that we're about to talk about, I remember I called Brandon and Tootie because this young woman, they were just so scared of their daughter. So scared that I think when we finally got them on board with doing the intervention, when the intervention happened that day, the parents actually left that morning and weren't even there because they were so scared, right? So my first question to you guys, and thank you for being here on Connect Call. I love you guys immensely.
For sure.
When you're talking to parents, what do you need to do first to get them into a place where they effectively can deliver this message, before we can even get to the intervention? And that's what I also tell families is we got to slow this train down, right? Because it's fine to get them in, but once they're in, we got to make sure we're doing everything, that we're delivering the same message, that they know that, they can't just leave, right? So we got to slow this down to make sure the family's ready to deliver that message. So what are some things you do when you're talking to the parents, to get them into a place where they can effectively do that?
I know one of the first things, man, is getting the parents to understand that, you want your kid to change, but the first people that got to change is you. So
Right.
You guys got to be willing to do some things that we're asking you to do, in order to change the course of your kids. So, we don't, one of the main things when Tootie started was, she was like, look, if you ain't willing to change, we don't want your money, because it's going to take you guys to change and do some things that's very uncomfortable, first, and be willing to do those uncomfortable things, in order to get your kid back on track. So it's really just empowering those parents to change, and be able to talk to their kid, in a healthy way, or be able to do the tough thing, of bottom lining them, to get their kid to change the trajectory, So yeah, man, that's one of the first things is empowering the parent, getting the parent to change, so they can talk to the kids. I know there's a lot of times where it's like we go to talk to the kid, and the whole time the kid looking at the parent, and that parent back there scared, well, that kid ain't going, but that parent back there saying, yeah, we following whatever they say, and got their back, whatever they do, and yeah, we're willing to do this. We're willing to do whatever it takes. And like Tootie would say, we're going to teaching the parent to say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna love you more than you could be mad at me. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes, because you can't see you. We see what you're doing. We see how you're distracting yourself. So, that's one of the first things, we do, in the intervention is preparing the parents as much as possible, for this.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I mean, it sounds really easy. It's funny. When parents call me, and as much as we say when kids go into treatment, I often look at when people ask how long treatment's going to be. It's kind of like learning a new language, right? So
Hmm.
we're teaching these parents also. It's not an overnight thing to suddenly all of a sudden we're going to talk to them and say, okay, you're going to deliver this message, and you're going to finally, in the first time in the history of being with your child, you're now gonna drop the hammer, right?
Yeah.
So and so it does take time to, and so how long do you typically work with parents before that intervention takes place?
Okay, I'll answer that. That depends. I'm the one who gets the first call, with the parent, and it's more about getting, like Brandon said, background information, and then asking the parents, "Hey, you got to change as much as the kid." And
Right.
I don't know, some are sicker than others, so some of 'em it takes maybe a week of me on the phone with them every day, them calling, asking more questions. But I want to comment on something I think you said, Hannah, about, the kids want to pick where they go to treatment and their therapists and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that is so. I tell the parents all the time, I am going to tell you what you need to hear. It's not going to be what you want to hear. And I'm getting ready to say it right now. If your child had cancer, would you let them pick the hospital they go
Right.
to and the oncologist? Would you? Would you? I don't think, but that's what this is. And I think Brandon and I both, like he just said, I mean, we just talk just really real to the parents. We just talk real. This is where
Yeah.
you're at.
Right.
And it's
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 funny you mentioned
insane.
that because, I was dealing with a family, don't want to go off topic the other day, but I was talking to a dad that, or a husband that I think I was trying to set you up with an intervention with this family. And every time he was texting me back, he was literally writing me what AI was saying. Like he was going to his chat GBT for this. And I'm going to have an
That's
episode
awesome.
on that where there's a time and a place for AI, and there's a time and a place for ChatGPT. But if you wouldn't be going, we wouldn't be going to ChatGPT if you broke your leg. You wouldn't be going to ChatGPT if you had
No.
cancer. And so, and I don't, and it's only with mental health and addiction. It's so crazy, right? To me, you know, your mental health, and your substance use can take you out, right? So to me, it's just as important as going to that cardiologist when telling you how not to have a heart attack, and to follow lead and to basically follow every direction. And I don't understand why there is still this kind of feeling where people is like, I got this, I can do it my way, and that's a lot of times, when you're talking to these parents and why they may pull out of this intervention process is how uncomfortable they are. They're not
Mhm.
ready to, and that's on
Right.
them. Like, what is it about them that they're so scared to, confront
Well,
their
that's 'cause
child?
that comes from their childhood.
Right.
That's right, that comes from their parents. I mean, it's trauma passed down, generational trauma. That's what we deal with. And the
Right.
codependency just screams from that. And that's
Right.
I mean, these parents so codependent because they had trauma, and so what they're gonna do, they're gonna spoil their kid, it's gonna come out sideways. Have
Right.
no boundaries, spoil the kid, let the kid run the show, don't wanna hurt their feelings, wanna
Right.
be their friend. Why? Because they weren't friends with their parents. Because their
Right.
parents grew up in the Depression. They didn't have friends. It's all passed down. And I think we do a uh really good explanation of that to families, and you can tell when the light goes off, like, "Oh, I never thought of it that way."
Right.
And explain to them what it's gonna take for your child to change. Is what Brandon said. You gotta change that much, and if you're not ready, that's okay. Keep my number.
Right.
Come back when you're ready. You
Right.
know, the door
It's
prizes will still be waiting for you.
It's funny. I worked with this mom once, and she straight up told me, in her childhood, her parents were really strict, and they sent her to like these like military school train. She had to go to this academy, and it was so strict that like she's now on the other spectrum with her child. And as we were talking, literally, these texts were coming in from her kid where he was all day long to his mom. And my mouth was open. The way he was speaking to his mother, and it was like nothing. Like he was like, I'm going to this rave tonight. You better da 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 da. And he was calling her every name in the book, and she didn't do anything. And I literally was like, if I even looked at my mother the wrong way, and I think, we're doing a disservice to these kids. And we were just talking about this before when you guys got on the episode, is 9 times out of 10 when we have families like this where the kids are taking their families emotionally hostage, these kids are actually craving someone to come in to give them this structure, or they're wanting, this change because it's not working for them either, So have you ever had times when you're working with parents where you will recommend, and this is what I'll also say to families, when we talk about intervention, and I said this with another guest I had about interventions, the biggest misconception is you think it's just about the client, but it's really the family intervention, right? It's really like, unless we get you guys good, like this isn't going to work, right? So we have to really work with you prior, during, after, all of that. But have you had situations where sometimes you've got to send a parent to treatment before we even get the kid into treatment?
Send a kid to parents. I
We
think we seen one
have.
where we did. I know we seen when
Yeah.
the parents went afterward the kid, because we always try to want to keep it about the kid first,
Right,
and we
right.
deal with the parents whenever you leave, and we do.
Yeah. I don't know if you're with me or if it was Chad at that time. It was an intervention. It was in Louisiana, and the dad was an alcoholic, but we were there for the kid. And we knew dad was an alcoholic, and we had
Hmm.
talked to him about that's going to be problematic. And we told him, boy, if you could only say you're going to get help. And at the intervention, the dad said, "Hey, son, I'm going to treatment." And we were like, yes.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
dad
Right.
went to treatment, the son went to treatment. That was the only time I think at the intervention that happened, but
Yeah, I remember
Brandon's
that.
right. We've told parents, don't do the intervention, don't save my number, dad or mom. When you're ready to go get help, you call us.
Right.
Because this is gonna backfire and you're gonna throw away your money.
And I think it's really powerful. I remember being in treatment and my mom kind of saying to me, like, I can't ask you to do stuff that I'm not going to do myself, right? So if I'm telling you to go to a meeting and ask for a number, tell you what, I'm going to go to a meeting tonight and I'm going to ask for a number. And that really hit me, because I think a lot of times we just think, we're going to put our kid in treatment and we're going to get them fixed and we'll be good. And it's not like that. And also, I think with the intervention, that's like half the battle, getting them through that door. Then the phone starts to ring when they're in treatment, right? The phone starts to ring. Because, and I tell families this because they always cry and they're like, why can't we take the house phone away? Or why are they being able to call us? And I'm like, no, let them, they're going to start calling you and you need to start practicing the messaging, which is, I'm sorry you're struggling right now, but there's nothing I can do. So I need you to talk to staff and people on site that can really help you. And I'm going to go to a meeting tonight and help myself. And, I hope you get a good night's sleep, get something to eat, and I love you. Bye. Because I remember when my mom started that narrative or that dialogue with me, because I was always able to manipulate the situation with her, when she started to saying, I'm sorry you're suffering, or I'm sorry you're struggling, but there's nothing I can do, I gotta go. I was like, who's brainwashing this woman? Like, what's happening to my mom? Don't listen to them,
Who hijacked her?
right? But do you find that a lot of times when you're doing interventions that the job's not over when they're in treatment? Like, you're still working with the parents afterwards and families.
Tootie, they laugh at me all the time and say, Brand, I got to deal with all these phone calls after this. We're going to talk about, like, I just laugh because I know that there's a lot of them. Because one of the things, we talk to the parents about is, hey, look, he's going to treatment right now, but understand, you guys got to hold the line for the next 14 to 16 months. You guys got to be strong because, for one, the kid can't come back to the same environment, so you guys got to, through this time, really change and throughout those, 16 months, start, pay attention to the kid because they relapse before they relapse because,
Right.
14 months, 4 months people relapse, 9 months people relapse, and like closer to 13, 14 months they relapse again because their thinking changes. It's like, you start thinking, you start changing that, man, instead of we, man, I got this under control. Start talking like that. So, we kind of got to give parents like warning signals of, when the kid possibly will relapse, if they will relapse because of the way they start talking and thinking they
Right.
got things under control. So
Right.
there's a lot of preparation, throughout that process of those 16 months because, it takes a long time, because like Tootie would always say, hey man, and she told it to me, Brandon, it took you a long time to get to this point. So however long it took you to get here, that's how long it's going to take you to get out of it. So don't
Right.
expect change to happen right now.
No.
So that's one of the things, we really point to the parents of, hey, look, that kid came here on a clean slate and all this stuff got on here. We ain't gonna say how it got on there, but it got on there. And all the people he was around, that kid was around was you guys at the beginning,
Right.
so
And
it's gonna take some change, Right?
right. And I think, I always tell parents this too, like, unfortunately, we do not graduate from our mental health situation or addiction. We
Mhm.
just, we learn, in life, this is a lifelong battle. So also what I like to talk about on this show is, a lot of my families, um, come to me, and unfortunately it's like anything else in life, if you have the resources are there, right? But if you've got a family, right, who doesn't have the resources, who are maybe more insurance dependent, who maybe don't have the money to afford to hire a Tootie and a Brandon, right? What are some takeaways? Like, what are some things you can say to them on the phone that maybe some tidbits that they can take away with them to help do this a little differently without professional help, if that comes to it?
Okay, so that depends. Like if it's a family from Louisiana, we talk to them about getting Louisiana Medicaid insurance if they're eligible, because it is a very good way for people to get treatment. We're
Right,
fortunate in Louisiana. If it's outside Louisiana, then I'm not familiar with other states as far as their state insurance.
right,
But I will tell them, ask them, "Hey, do you have a therapist?" Or, if y'all want to do, if y'all can't afford us, at some point, that depends. I mean, like if it's somebody that has to go inpatient, then I'll tell them, "Hey, look, y'all got to somehow get insurance because it treatment is expensive,
right,
it's not cheap, so,
right,
some way you gotta find a way to get them health insurance and get a
right.
policy that has substance abuse benefits and make sure you check for that before. And then, like, again, if they 0 insurance and 0 money, then sometimes I will say, "Look, okay, talk maybe depending on your child, they're in school, talk to a child's guidance counselor. Maybe they in wherever y'all live have some avenues for that your child to get help. I mean, there's Teen Challenge that, is out there. I'm not really a fan of it because it doesn't really have therapists, but if it's a safe place for that child to land
But
for a little while,
are there some like takeaways that you can say to the parents to change their messaging, or hopefully, in that call that they can look at the situation a little differently and approach it differently, that hopefully they'll do that? Is there any?
that wand, if I had that genie bottle, I
Yeah.
would use it. There's no one thing I can tell them. It's a
Right.
process for them.
Right.
Like it's a
Right.
process for me as an adult. When I went to rehab, it was a process for me to get well. There's not one thing I can tell them. What I can
Right.
tell them is, hey, look, I tell you, these are things I would stop doing, and these are things you need to start implementing. But I can tell you, I'm dealing with a family right now for the last 3 years. Every time they come see me, they want to do an intervention on their child. Every time I tell them, "Yeah, but are you willing to do these things?" "I can't take the credit card, Tootie." "Okay, come back in another year. Let's reconvene in the." I
But
mean,
why is it? Like, what is everyone
so
scared of?
his trauma. This dad has never dealt with his trauma from his childhood. And I keep telling him, "Your child will not get better. Look, you keep making the most effed up decisions," which is,
Right.
"No, I can't do it yet." That answer, I mean, like, you failed the test. Again, come back in a year when you're ready. In the meantime, his daughter is gonna get to the point where, no, there's not even an intervention. There's no help. I really believe at some point, their brain gets so jacked up from drugs. And this girl's on meth.
Right.
I mean, the longer you wait to get your kid help, the longer they have to be in treatment. How
Right.
many times have Brandon and I said to each other, they should have called us 3 years ago.
Right.
Why
Right.
didn't y'all call us then? Now, your child's going to have to go for a year of treatment. If you'd have called 3 years ago, they probably got it going for 30, 90 days. Now it's a year.
It's not just about saving them, it's about saving the people they're interacting with, you know, and it's just going to continue to get worse. And I think, you know, I think parents take for granted how this process is. You know, it's a lot. It's as much as we are working to have these kids change their whole coping skills and looking at life differently. It's having them parents do the same thing, you know. And I'll say this: I had a case once at treatment where this young woman, God bless her, she was borderline, and she would announce to the treatment center every time she was going to run away, and she did. She ran away every time. And every time she ran away, she would call mom and dad, and mom and dad were right there to pick her up because God forbid their daughter was on the street. They couldn't handle it. And I remember we were working with this interventionist who they stayed on to do case management and stuff like that. And it was me, it was the clinical team, it was the interventionist. We were begging these parents. We said, just this one time, she is going to run. And she did run. We're just asking you, just for today. Tomorrow you can pick up the phone. Just for today, do not pick up the phone. Just let's see what happens. And I remember it was so hard for them not to pick up that phone. But guess what? They didn't pick up the phone. An hour later, she called the treatment center saying, are my parents okay? They're not picking up the phone. Like, is everything okay? And we're like, they're fine. They're like, and she was like, well, I don't know what to do now. And they said, well, why don't you come back? You know? And she came back. And it just, you know, it's these tiny shifts. It doesn't have to be these major, you know, steps these parents have to take. It's just these tiny shifts these parents can take. And with that, you'll see, like, it's amazing how things will just be different, you know? And so I'm just grateful to have providers like you guys on the front lines to help families, and just to get the word out that, you know, this is a long process. And a lot of times, you know, it's not about if the kid is ready. It's not about what the kid wants. You know, if I had picked my treatment center, I wouldn't be alive today. You know, I had a mom and dad recently just call me and immediately put the kid on the phone with me. And I'm like, why are we doing this? You know what I mean? I think it's just getting these parents, yeah, you're right, to kind of look at their own trauma.
Can I add something here? It's the same for adults.
Yeah.
You're saying it's the same for adults. You know, if an adult is going to treatment, well, the wife or the husband or the family, I mean, everybody, those people have changed.
Right.
If you wait too long, then that's even longer they have to stay in treatment. So it's people,
Right.
kids for sure.
And if we're talking about substances, I got to be honest with you, and I'll say it. I said it to this dad who was contemplating like how he was going to change his messaging and he wasn't ready to do it. And I said, sir, with all due respect, is this young woman, she was drinking every day, is she still got the car that you gave her? And he said, yes. And I go, and she's got the keys to that car, right? And he goes, yes. I go, so it's on you now that every time she gets in that car, she's putting everybody at risk. I think the main takeaway from this episode, if anything, is, you know, if you're going to call us also for recommendations and resources and for information, listen to us then, you know?
Yeah.
I've never gone to a doctor's appointment to see a specialist and say, thank you for all that information. I'm now going to do it my way. Right?
Yeah.
Why do they do that with us? Why? It's like, and I'll say to them, you called me and now you're still doing it your way.
Right.
Like,
Don't call me. Yeah.
like, please.
Yeah.
So I'm just grateful to have you guys on here. And I didn't get to mention this in the beginning, but Brandon Mitchell, you know, what's amazing about you is, you were one of the biggest defense linemen for the Patriots for many, many years, and you had this career, and you had, played football and do everything. And it shows that, mental health and addiction does not discriminate, and I love seeing men like you who have thrived and are doing this work, because I still think, and that's a whole nother episode, there's such a stigma for young men and getting sober and working on their mental health, and athletes. And there's a whole thing in there where, and that's like a whole nother episode I might bring you back on for, Brandon, is just, how many kids that are struggling even in sports, that we're seeing in college sports, and no one's really dealing with it because there's such a stigma, I have 2 young adult men right now who don't want to get on the phone with me because they're not going to take a pill, because they don't want to, they want to be strong. They don't need medicine. They're good, And so, that's what I've loved working with you, is just like, you're such to me, an example of, you're the man.
I had a really good coach, man. I had a really good coach. And I tell you, I told her, and when I first met her, it was like, hey, look, people don't understand. I've been coached since I was 7 years old. The people are afraid to approach you sometimes. But and I say to her, man, one thing about it, I've been coached all my life. Hey, look, I don't understand how to be sober. I don't know how to understand what to do, but I know one thing I know how to do is be coachable. So you just coach me and tell me what to do, man. I'm gonna give you my best, period. Just coach me up on the game of life, coach me up on how to be sober, coach me up on what to do. Give me the game plan. Because that's one of the things about athletes, we can follow a plan. You give us a solid plan, a good coach, man, we'll perform. And we'll get it done. And so many people say, yeah, I want to be tough, yeah, I'm this and that and all these things, but the truth is, like, we talk about it. Hey man, if you're not sick or something's not wrong, you take cough medicine, it don't work. But if you're sick, you take cough medicine, it works. So the medicine is working, so something is off. I don't know what it is, but something is off because the medicine is working. Medicine don't work if you don't have a problem. So some people, you think you're strong, you think this, but you working your butt off in the gym, you got some kind of vice, like those guys you're talking about, they got something's going on. They say they're strong. I know they're hiding something. We all hide it.
Right.
And the thing is about it, like I said, the thing is about, hey man, look, just be coachable, because you can't see you. You can't see what's going on. You can't see the things that you're missing out on because you're possibly being too strong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man, we can't see those things,
Right.
Yeah.
No, I love you and I love this, and I definitely will have you back on to talk more about that, because, we definitely saw that. That's a whole, during COVID and everything, just with the athletes, a lot of solitude and a lot of stigma. And there was just this sense of, we don't ask for help or don't need to ask for help. And so anyway, I'm just happy that you guys came on the show. I love you both truly, madly, deeply. I thank you. I continue to work with you guys. You two are two of the best out there in the field, in the game.
Thank you.
Tootie Landry, Brandon Mitchell. You're going to hear at the end of this, we're going to have in the show notes, how to get in touch with you guys if families need you in crisis. And I just, again, thank you so much for being here, and I love you, and have a good day.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Connect Call. As we conclude, remember that insights shared are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and should not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We strongly recommend consulting a qualified medical health professional or healthcare provider for personalized advice tailored to your unique needs. Your mental health journey is important, and having the right support is essential. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis or require immediate assistance, please reach out to a mental health provider or emergency services in your area. We're grateful to have you as part of our community, and your well-being remains our priority. So follow us on social media to stay connected, and be sure to catch one of our episodes on our YouTube channel. We're here to support you every step of the way.